Hello, I'm Rake, and I'll likely be the new narrator after TC left. This script was both written and researched by players which have been active participants to almost every event here described, so take that as both your source and your bias warning. Today we'll be discussing the history of the Catholic Church. When exactly the church was first created is likely lost to history, with our best guess being November or December of 2022. The first pope was Ratzi, however he was highly inactive as pope. Church members could be counted on the fingers of a single hand, and it was generally quite unknown. Eventually, most likely around January or February of 2023, the papacy was transferred over to Aprons, who was quite bored with the church and almost ended up disbanding it. However, after a religious debate, insult shouting, on the Byzantium Discord, he decided to take the church more seriously and actually build it up. Pretty soon, however, he got bored. Not wanting to disband, he decided to transfer the papacy to Aura. During his tenure, most core members joined, such as Racket, Shadow, Yanako, Smudgy, L1, so on. He also took a bit more unconventional approach to advertising, with his preferred methods being to declare a crusade on Byzantium, the then world superpower, which he did on the 21st of May 2023. He got absolutely decimated in the war, was exiled to Sri Lanka, where he founded Sinhala, and got a 20,000 war reparations bill. Aura also had something of a Schrodinger's loyalty. He was both a Catholic and a Badnik, that's a follower of Egemenism, while also constantly betraying both and neither really noticing or knowing about his split loyalties. While all of this was going on, a day earlier, Smudgy and Aprons joined forces to create a new church, separate from Aura's influence. Their issue was that Aura mostly invented the rules on the fly as it suited him. They wanted a more centralized system, where it would be easier to hold individuals accountable, including all the way up to the Pope. The way they hoped to achieve this was by creating a permanent council of 5 members that would elect the Pope, and every month vote on if he should stay the Pope. The council was made up of L1, Aprons, Piloted, Yanako, and Shadow. Smudgy would become papal magistrate, which is basically head administrator, and Raigai the Pope. The following day, Yanako, with consent from the rest of the council, would invite Rake to their new church, who had thus far remained loyal to Aura. Rake liked the system far more than Aura's wannabe dictatorship, but he still had an issue with the permanency of the council. So, after he proposed it and the council had an internal vote, the Papal Council would hold its first democratic election on May 20th, 2023. Notice this being one day earlier than Aura's crusade. The composition of the council was the same as the last one, but with Racket swapping out Aprons in the election. A few days later, Aura agreed to step down as Pope and joined the newly created church. Most of these first few weeks were basic setup to get the church to run in accordance with the rules, which was the original vision. Next noteworthy event would happen on the 9th of June 2023. This was less than a month from the election of the first council, with the intended term length being 2 months. So on the 9th, Rake proposed some kind of mechanism to remove a papal magistrate from office. However, he also stressed in the message that Smudgy has not done anything like this yet, and it is merely to future-proof the rules. Smudgy would respond by announcing new papal elections on the 10th, one day after, which made it seem like he was trying to get rid of Rake on the council. To his credit, he claims it was an accident because he mixed up dates. No thorough investigation of the event was launched, and obviously thus not finished. The council would then pressure Smudgy into giving up power. However, they did not specify who give power to, so he gave it to Piloted, which was the only person not attacking him during this engagement, probably because he was offline. After Piloted took the reins, he completely changed the system. He abolished the Papal Council, instead replacing it with the College of Cardinals, which would be appointed by the Pope and require confirmation from a majority of all Catholics. Pope was now also a time-limited position, with a 1-month term. Along with this, he also fired Raigai as Pope, because no one saw him for over a month at this point, thus requiring new elections to be held. The race came down to Rake and Piloted, with Piloted barely coming out on top. However, he decided last minute he didn't want to be Pope, so passed the papacy off to Rake. This did not sit right with either camp, so new elections were held, this time between Rake and Tommy. Tommy won by a single vote. His cardinal appointees were Rake, TC, L1, Aprons, and Aura, all of which were confirmed in the public vote. He did not do much, however, as 3 days later he converted to paganism and left without a trace. The next day, Pilate converted to Eggmanism and also left. This put Smudgy back in charge, who, after a public vote making this decision, returned to the former system of a papal council. Several important players such as L1 and Aprons were also banned recently, which meant the church was quite inactive. The council was also only made up of 3 people by now. The first time in history it wasn't up to the full amount. Those being Zoro, Rake, and Aura. Both Zoro and Aura presented their candidates but failed to get them elected, so they settled on Rake as Pope. What followed was probably the first genuinely quiet time in the church's history. However, during this time, Smudgy used his newly re-obtained magistrate powers to create the Catholic Intelligence, CI for short. Its purpose was to identify and then subtly eliminate all suspected spies of Eggmanism within the church. I haven't mentioned this yet due to all the Game of Thrones-like plotlines going on, but Catholicism and Eggmanism were in quite a bit of rivalry since, as far as we know, forever. Smudgy miscalculated though, because his people for the job were Trout and Aura. Along with Smudgy, all 3 of these players are famous for sharing classified information when they shouldn't. Naturally then, only a few days later, Aura and Rake couped Smudgy. It in fact was so easy for the coupsters, it is now being referred to as the self-coup. Following this, Rake was now both Pope and the Magistrate, which he immediately used to abolish the position of the Magistrate and grant most of its powers to the Pope. This was the first time outside of the 3 days during Pilate's rule that Pope had any serious amount of power. After the coup, the structure of the church fundamentally changed. No major changes were made to the papal rules, but their enforcement was significantly tightened. During this time, the church attracted the attention of a new player, one Nicano Crofter. Nick had many ideas to fix the church, and the church's primary issue since founding has been activity. So he had plenty of ideas to fix it, just like anybody when they first joined. Many of his ideas were implemented, such as Nick and Rake co-authoring rules for the creation of guilds, which, with very few changes, still stand to this day. He was also the primary author of the Catholic Constitution, the only theological document the Church would ever produce. His nation, Kingdom of Nicano, is also responsible for many new members joining, though despite being high in number, the Nicano invasion did not do much for church activity. Around this time, the church history up to that point was written down by Rake, and can still be accessed on the Catholic Discord today. Shortly before the Nicano invasion, the church was also hit with a second, smaller ban wave that got Zoroark permanently and Smudgy temporarily banned. After several months of attempting, and failing, to fix the dwindling activity, Catholicism got itself involved in a rivalry with another religion, Slime. This was a common enemy with their arch nemesis, Eggmanism. So they agreed to bury the war hatchet for the time being. Slime would crash and burn by itself with no outside influence, making this unofficial friendship the only thing of substance to come out of it. Not long after this, a major monastery was built in the Kingdom of Nicano, which was meant to serve as the Catholic archive. It is notable for being one of the only buildings that the Builders Guild actually helped build. The guilds weren't very active in general. Towards the end of the Golden Age, one Zeus HN also joined the church. At first, he seemed to have a lot of ideas to fix the church, same as everyone knew. However, it soon became clear that he was motivated by little else than his own ego, and was very bad at hiding it. He was also generally quite annoying, him pinning various people, usually Rake, which became a meme for a while due to this. He then attempted a very poor coup by creating roles Supreme Lord, end quote, and Vice Pope, end quote. They had no rights because he didn't have the rights to give rights, which made him the first councillor to be ever voted out of the council by the council itself. He then claimed the church wasn't even Christian to begin with, and that he'll make his own. This never happened, and he simply left. Activity saw a brief spike during the First Roman War, between Mar and Zakopane. The conclusion of this war would have them sign a treaty with Pagalik that they could build a Vatican in his town. After 4 months of barely any progress, which is largely to blame on the church's massively declining activity, Plag simply walked out on the deal and forced them to relocate elsewhere. The cathedral stands in Zakopane today. After all of this, Reik was really tired, which culminated in his voluntary exile to Siberia to escape from Nespo. During this exile, he voluntarily gave up the position of the Pope on March 23, 2025, making him easily the longest-serving Pope. After this, Pope Shadow was democratically elected, and that is also where I'm going to end this documentary, as today we reach the modern day. If you've kept watching up until here, I don't know, hit subscribe, we'll probably get memberships eventually. You know, usual stuff, you know what to do, okay? Bye.